me like you believe that somebody's sexual orientation leads them to being a bad parent, and
I'm not a bad parent. I don't want to get you wrong here. I'm not saying they're a bad parent. I'm saying they physically, biologically, do not parent the same as the opposite sex. They just don't. They've done.
Who's to say that's a bad thing?
Because they've done studies on how that's a bad thing. How both mothers and fathers bring completely different aspects. Like the rough and tumble study that they done in both 2015 and I think they did it again like 2018, just to see if they got the same results, which they tended to do, showed less likely chance of forming aggression as toddlers. Right? They had reduced aggression and also it regulated their emotions better. Right, with this rough and tumble play. Again, it also created risk taking into their mind and now in allowing that to grow. That's okay. Mothers like that's something that like two lesbian parents. Again, women don't want to do that because they have, as they've shown in studies, that they tend to just not do that because they're just much more compassionate human beings. They don't want to think that they're going to hurt their child at all. They're just all about safety rather than risk taking. But someone doesn't go. But I want to make it clear, they're not bad parents. They just can't be a parent from the opposite sex.
Sorry, Mojo, may I ask Keegan a question?
Yeah, jump on in, brother.
So, Keegan, the question I want to ask you, so, what if they were a single parent? Are you saying that individual, that child, cannot be a well-rounded individual? If they were in a single parent household not of their own making?
Well, again, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's an African proverb, and it says it takes a whole village to raise a child, not just two parents, and you can get many different influences and many contributions from your uncles, your aunts, and those that you consider to be your uncles and aunts. It takes a whole community to raise a child, not just two parents. So that single parent child in the parent household, are you saying they're not well-rounded?
Again, there can always be exceptions to the rule, but that's the same thing as being like, should we just have all children be in single-parent households? We all understand that statistics show that children in single-parent households don't do well the majority of the time. The majority, like well over the majority. They're like 3.5 times more likely to experience poverty. I think they're like 2 times more likely to spend time in prison. Like, these are bad statistics for single-parent households. And I'm not saying, again, we can't make it illegal for people to have sex, have children out of wedlock, split up. I mean, I guess you could do that in a weird way. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that for adoption, we're saying, hey, we're going to put a child into homes. I'm saying, especially in newborns. Again, you can debate me on, I would have more of like an ethical problem with like children above the age of a toddler age, but newborn up to 2 years old, we don't have a placement crisis when that comes to that. I think there's like 38 parents waiting for every newborn being born for adoption, right? Like we have a wait list. Like continue.
Sorry, Keegan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just let me know when I can chime in.
No,
Keegan. Yeah, the point I wanted to make was obviously most heteronormative scenarios where there's two parents, they get together, have a child, there's no verification and scrutinization taken if they are fit parents. However, when there are lesbian and gay parents, they have to go through far more many checks. I would say, I'm assuming that every country's processes are the same, but they do, on average, go through far more many checks to see that they are competent parents and they have the means to provide for that child. I would say it's a far safer bet that in most circumstances, not all, I have to emphasize that they would actually be the far better parent than a guy and a girl that got together and the girl got pregnant. So I don't understand how you can just say that gay parents are not just as good, or may, in some cases, and I emphasize some cases, could actually be far better. Because they've gone through so many processes to actually demonstrate to whichever authorities they have demonstrate that they can be.
Well, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I don't want to, again, I'm not trying to take Roger's stage and center myself. But I understand what you guys are just trying to do, trying to get my viewpoint. Again, we're talking about adoption, right? The same thing with the gay couple and heterosexual couple. They have to be financially stable if you're going to adopt a newborn in this country. You go through a whole process. My parents, they adopted children to our family. I've been the process firsthand, and they've been a part of organizations for my whole life. I've seen it countless of times. So yes, the newborn situation, the heterosexual couple is a better couple on paper than the homosexual couple, without a doubt. And in this country, we're giving priority to homosexual.
So Keegan, no, hold on. So Keegan, you keep repeating this, but there's a study by let me get it correct. American Academy of Pediatrics that says that there's no difference in cognitive, social, or emotional development between children raised by same-sex or opposite-sex couples. My question for you is, because you keep going back to fathers and mothers parent differently. Well, if you've got 100 fathers and line them up, they're not all going to have the same parenting style. If you lined up 100 mothers, they wouldn't all have the same parenting style. So I think there's a fallacy and just a fatal fundamental flaw in. I won't even call it logic because I don't think that you're approaching this from a logical perspective. If your genuine concern is you want these children to have the best parents, then why wouldn't we then go and identify the tools and the tactics used by great parents, and then we could ask ourselves, well, who's more likely to deliver on that? And I think you would be hard to convince anybody that simply having a sexual orientation that's other than heterosexual, that somehow that means that the people wouldn't be able to optimize parent skill.
Can I quickly chime in?
Well, I wanted Keegan to respond to that, and then absolutely, Dummy, I'd love for you.
Yeah, again, I'll just continue to reiterate that. I think that we all understand that we're all biologically as genders just completely different. We fundamentally do different things, and this is studies that they've just done on just opposite sex. We have many more years than any homosexual studies that you guys can find. They've done it for decades and decades. And so that's just
Keegan, you're aware that there are parents, like if we were to just isolate and look at heterosexual parents, if we were to look at the thing that you're prioritizing, heterosexual two-person household, which by the way, that is a two-person household, a father and a mother. If you were to ask me, is that the most ideal? I would say, I would probably concur, simply because it would be, well, provided that it's their birth parents, right? I would say that would typically be advantageous. However, there's caveats to that. What if the father is abusive? What if the mother is an addict?
Can I add another real quick?
I would like to speak though.
Just on this point, 10 seconds. The phenomenon of a two-parent household is actually quite modern and new in the history of human development. We didn't live in single-family households. We lived in multi-generational households. It goes back to Rupert's point about, people were raised by grandparents and parents and older siblings and, right? So this idea of the natural ways to heterosexual parents is kind of a historical inaccurate.
Well, it's just the opposite sexes. Like you could convince me that a polyamorous relationship between two men and a woman, but the two are attracted to each other, but one man's bi and he likes a woman. Whatever, this world's crazy. I would be more in favor. I would say that polyamorous relationships should be able to adopt because it's literally just based off of the natural instincts that you have biologically as a man and as a woman are completely different. This is done by every single study. And so my opinion, and opinion that has been formed based off of studies, I understand that Roger stated a study that I'll definitely look at after this, but is that they generally, on the majority, behave differently differently, and it's beneficial to the child to have both parents.
Well, I would like to bring you some studies actually, right? Because you're talking about studies and behavioral issues. When it comes to marriages, men gay couples tend to divorce and have a better structural household than lesbian gays or straight couples, because the divorce rate is only about 25% versus straight couples is 50 and lesbians is about 75-80%. When it comes to financial issues, gay households tend to have way more money than straight couples or lesbian couples. So when it comes to all these studies, right there alone, you have a better structure of life for the child to be adopted to, right? So what studies are you talking about? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I do. You might have just come to the conversation late. Again, in the United States, if you're adopting a newborn, they look at your financial record, they make sure you're financially stable. You're just talking. I understand. Hey, you know, you're born into a. I mean, you're talking about every single heterosexual couple, every single married heterosexual couple. That includes a lot of people. Gay people, when they adopt a child, they have to be financially stable, right? And so, just like a heterosexual couple, when they adopt a newborn, they have to be financially stable. So when just looking at adoption, it's pretty much even, and then now you're just talking about whether or not the aspects of having two men adopt, let's say, a daughter, how would they raise her compared to a mother and a father? And I would say it's just drastically different, and it's been shown.
Well, if I can just say really quickly, I understand a lot of Keegan's points, but I also kind of want to highlight the fact that a lot of these adoption agencies or child protective services, when they take these children out of homes or mothers give up their babies for adoption, as we know, oftentimes they're not put into healthy environments. Oftentimes these children get placed in abusive homes. We've heard numerous reports over the years, whether these homes are, led by straight couples or gay couples. I just wish we had a better vetting process in place. I don't care where the child goes, if it's a gay couple, straight couple, single couple. I want to get more children out of the system because the system is not healthy for these kids. And then we have to think about if they're in adoption homes, once they turn 18 and they age out of the system, especially the foster care system, they're put on the street. And they're put on the street, they don't have any support, they don't have any resources. Oftentimes they might have to turn to drugs, homelessness. They're not given a proper head start in life if they don't have some sort of, foundation. So I just wish we had a better vetting process in place for anybody that wants to adopt. I understand that money is important, but I also feel like if we can put these kids in homes that are loving and supportive, for me, that's ideal. I don't care if the parents are gay, straight, or if it's a single couple. If you can provide for that child and love that child and give that child a good start in life so that when they get older, they know how to navigate the world. And if they fall down a little bit, they can fall back home, right? I think that's important, not the sexuality of the people that are raising them.
Here's my question, and because this becomes more of an ethical debate, I really want to hear from Roger. Maybe he can give me his point of view. So again, if we have no problem, let people be based off of who they love. Would anyone have a problem if two sisters who were sexually active with each other, incest, can't produce children because they're gay? Would you guys first of all be okay with them getting married? And then the secondary question would be, are you guys okay with them adopting?
That's illegal in every state in the country.
I'm asking you an
ethical
question.
Yeah, so here's my perspective on marriage. If that was the question, why do we? I would back it up. I don't believe that people should have to submit an application to get the license to be married. I don't think that the government should make a decision on who can or cannot get married. I think that if somebody, look, I would probably not attend a wedding between two sisters. I think that that would just be beyond my level of comprehension. I think I would probably stay away from that one. But I think that marriage, I think we put it in the hands of the wrong people. I think that George and Martha Washington, for example, didn't have a marriage license, and they were able to marry. I think the mere fact that we say you have to go to the government to get their blessing to be married, marriage to me seems like a individual commitment that people make, but ceremonially, it's more of a religious ceremony in which there's there's cultural and religious belief that's tied into this. I would say that if the church that you attend has allows for it, and you are in a consensual relationship and you want to get married, then go ahead. But I don't think there should be any advantages tax-wise of getting married or remaining single. I just think that the entire institution of marriage, the way that we do it here in this country, where the government determines who is and recognizes who is or isn't married, is the problem. Does that mean that I support incest? No, I also cringe at that idea, and I can explain why if you guys care. But I think it's, for most people, it's self.
Roger, I wonder, like, what do you do with, like, part of the reason that marriage is a civil contract, right? And so when, church and state and pre-modern societies or religion in your culture were not as delineated, this wasn't a big deal. But now, you might want to get married in a religious ceremony or whatever. It's weird because you get married in a religious ceremony, but the state solemnizes it so that there are legal protections around it, right? So how would you deal with if you didn't have the state issuing marriage licenses, how do you establish who's legally married and then who gets when the divorces and the child, my understanding is part of the reason for the state, offer giving marriage licenses and stuff is so that you have, because the state deals with legal ramifications when you get divorced very often, right?
So Scott, if what you're looking for is a contract, why would you have to be married to enter into a contract? You could do that with just simply, drafting up paperwork and getting it notarized.
Yeah, we could do that. That would be an acceptable alternative. That basically, that instead of marriage, you had some sort of civil contracts that people wanted to do in addition to whatever private communities they had solemnizing their relationship. They're saying, okay, in addition to the synagogue or church, that we're going to add these legal public connotations.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting to me is this entire conversation when we. It went into adoption, right? That was like the first thing that people said of why homosexuality, what the question was, should homosexuals have the same rights that heterosexuals have? I think the answer to that is yes. I also think that there's a big difference between rights and privileges, and I think we should think about that. I'm not a big believer in the idea that look, if somebody else has to do something for you, that it's not really a right. Rights are these things that were granted to us by our Creator, right? The Creator gives us life, and I think that most societies believe in the sanctity of life. Although we had a conversation last night with a death cult that didn't. But where I'm at with this is that it seems like the people that are most against adoption by homosexuals to adopt children, it seems like those people are not necessarily coming at this from a logical perspective. They could say things like, "Oh, well, fathers, and mothers parent differently." Well, if what you're worried about is different parenting